All right, welcome back to the Bing Ads Bootcamp. Today we're going to be talking about week 2, lesson 1. We're going to be talking about keywords. They are really, really important when it comes to running Bing Ads campaigns and PPC in general. So in this lesson, we're just going to go over the basics and some advanced stuff of what keywords are and how they work. Now, like I just said, keywords are the core principle of Bing Ads and SEM, which is search engine marketing. It's really how the internet works right now and kind of how our brains work. Keywords actually were created. They were a technology invented by the people who helped invent writing of books. So keywords were developed as a way for us to index and find information, specifically in books. So instead of having to look through the whole book, page after page, looking for the information that you had, someone at some point had the bright idea to create what we know now as an index in a book, where you can look for keywords that help you find information. So if you're in an encyclopedia and there's thousands of pages about all sorts of different information, you can just flip to the index or and look for a keyword that's generally related to the thing that you're looking for, or maybe it's an exact keyword. So if you've ever used an index in a book, you kind of know how keywords work. That's exactly how they work. Now, in this context, obviously, we're talking about search engines, and that's exactly how search engines work. They literally go out and find every single word on every single web page on the planet, and they put it all in an index. They keep track of it all, and they put it in a list that can be organized. And what they do with all of those words is they organize them into keywords. So Bing and Google both have technology that crawls all over the internet and finds all the web pages out there and finds out what they're about based on the words that are on the page. So for our purposes, keywords are the way that you're going to find your prospects and customers, because that's what the user types in. That's what your prospects and customers type into the search engine that you're advertising on, in this case, Bing. They go to Bing and they type in a keyword, or actually they don't type in a keyword. They are thinking in terms of keyword, and they do end up typing what we call a keyword, but what they're actually typing in is a search term. So that's what Bing and AdWords call the words that a user types into the search box. It's called a search term. On our side, as the advertisers, we call them keywords. We use search terms as well. We'll get into that at some point. That's more kind of advanced thing once you get into it. But this is what the user types into the search that will trigger your ad, and you get to control just how your ad, who it gets shown to, which people search for which things that you want to put your ad in front of. So there are basically 3 different types of keywords in Bing and Google as well. There are some other types, and I'm sure it's pretty crazy that I don't know them and I've spent so much money on keywords, but these are the main ones that you're going to have to be familiar with. Broad match, phrase match, and exact match. I don't know why, but when I was first learning about search engine marketing and PPC traffic, pay-per-click traffic, it was really confusing for me. It's such a simple concept, but I don't know why. I just didn't get the connection between keywords and the ads. I kind of got it loosely, but what I'm about to explain to you made it make a lot more sense. So there's broad match, phrase match, and exact match. Okay, you're going to understand what all of those are in the next few minutes. So broad match is basically what it sounds like. It's a very broad match to the keywords that you've chosen. And say you want to bid on the keyword car parts. Well, Bing uses algorithms and technology to guess what, they have this giant index of all the words that people use and how often they use them and the correlation and crazy algorithms. So they can guess that if you are targeting people who are searching for car parts, you're very likely also going to want to show your ad to someone who searches for auto parts. Synonyms, those are a big part of the broad match game. So if someone types auto parts and you're targeting car parts, Bing will still show your ad because they understand how language is set up and what people really want. And we all have different ways of searching for things. You might search for something by saying, automobile parts, and then somebody says car parts and somebody says auto parts, or somebody might say, what's the part of my car that needs oil, or I don't know much about cars. So people just get at information in different ways. That makes sense. We're all different, and people use search engines differently. They use different words, different phrasing, different order. But Broadmatch does a pretty good job of just kind of figuring out what they meant, or figuring out how related the keyword you're choosing is to what they meant. So these are the best way to reach out or explore. A lot of times, the recommendation is to have fewer broad match than the other types of matches that we'll talk about in a second. So I usually go with one broad match per ad group. That's very specific information. But a broad match, I always think of it as my scout. It's my explorer. It's going out and finding people that I might not think to target through my choosing of exact and phrase match. So broad match is you just let it go and go out and explore, and it will bring people back to you that it thinks you are, that you want to target. So that's a really conceptual way of explaining it. But it's also, in practical terms, it's typically the lowest cost, the lowest click-through rate, because it's the least likely to be related exactly to what the person typed. And it's usually the lowest conversion. That's not always the case. Sometimes your broad match is really good at guessing who wants your product or the thing that you're set up as your conversion goal. It's also the most traffic available. So if you look up, when we get into our keyword research in the next step, you'll see different things get searched for at different amounts. Some things get searched for hundreds of thousands of times a month, and some only get searched for 10 times a month across the whole country or world or whatever. And broad match are, the most broadly connected terms, so there's the most traffic out there. So if you are targeting car parts, that's a huge search term that probably has hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, I don't know the data on something like that, but there's probably hundreds of thousands of people a month searching for something broadly related to car parts. But it's not a very good term to target, and we'll talk more about that in the next couple minutes. But you're probably not targeting that anyways. You're probably going to focus more on exact and phrase match. But it's good to have some broad match in your campaigns, because if you only try to predict what people might be searching for that is going to get results, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity. And broad match is the way to go. And we'll talk more in the strategy and actual implementation of the 7 profit activators, how to set up, how to keep the broad match exploring under control and keep it profitable for you. All right, so here's an example of a broad match term. So your broad match keyword that you type into Bing is cupcakes. And the user types cupcake wars, and Bing shows your ad because that's loosely related to the word cupcakes. And it might be a great match. Maybe the fact that this person is searching for Cupcake Wars, which is a television show, means that they're really into cupcakes. But I know a lot of people who watch Cupcake Wars that are not so it's not like they're ever gonna be, buying or making cupcakes. So it might not be a great match. Maybe, and you only know through testing. You might find that people who search for cupcake wars are your best customers. They're the people who are most likely to be buying your cupcakes. Or you might find that even though, Bing thinks that because the words are related, Bing doesn't necessarily know that Cupcake Wars is a television show. And this can happen with a lot of weird terms. That's why we'll talk about it later, but you got to check the search terms, and see what people are actually typing in that's getting your clicks, because sometimes it's not really related at all. It's not related to what you want. I mean, it might be related in theory based on the words that they're using, but it's not related to the goal that you're going for with your campaign. So this is just something to definitely be aware of. A broad match could be a great match, or it might not be. And so next, we're going to talk about phrase match. Now, these are more precise because you have more control over knowing what this person's searching for. And typically, they have a higher click-through rate and higher conversion than broad match. Makes sense. The best way to explain what a phrase match is to show you some examples. A phrase match is obviously a phrase. And by the way, one thing I didn't explain about broad match is the way that you put a broad match keyword into your campaign is just to type the words as they are with no punctuation marks, or no quotation marks, and no brackets, which I'll show you examples of in a second. So if you're doing car parts, your term that you would type into Bing would just be car parts. There would be no punctuation or anything. I think that's called punctuation. Okay, so phrase match is different. I put it in quotes because that's how you put it into your keywords. If you're building your keywords, then you would say car parts. And so what that will do, I'll show an example in a second. And you might go, and what we often do is I'll show you a cool tool later that does this really fast and automatically. But what you might do manually is go car parts, car, auto parts, and whatever other car equipment or something. So those would catch different phrases. This is more precise. Yeah, typically higher click-through rate, higher conversion. So here are some examples. Your keyword is the phrase cupcake recipe. So for Bing to show this ad to somebody, they have to have typed something that includes the exact phrase cupcake recipe in that order. So they had to have typed cupcake. Now, that they did not have to type quotes. That's just how you communicate that you want to do a phrase match. That's just the way that Bing knows that you want to target a phrase match keyword. They would just go into their search engine and type cupcake recipe and maybe something else. So let's see an example here. So if they do that, your ad will show if they type cupcake recipe book, and they wouldn't type it with quotes probably, although some people do. It's crazy what people actually search for. But because this contains the exact phrasing, the exact order, and the exact words, cupcake and recipe in that order, then it will show your ad. This could say book, this could say collection, it could say guy, cupcake recipe guide. They could be looking for lots of different things, but if you with time or with the research and knowledge you already have of your people you're targeting, you'll figure out which ones of these are going to produce more customers, conversions, prospects, etc. Now, if somebody typed cupcake show, which would appear in a broad match search probably, it will not show your ad for this because it does not have cupcake recipe in that exact order. So if somebody types cupcake show, your ad will not be shown. Now, it will be shown for cupcake show cupcake recipe. So this part would not validate, but then because it includes the phrase cupcake recipe in that order, it would still show for this term. So that's how a phrase match works. If it contains this phrase anywhere in, it could be like something like, I really hate the cupcake show cupcake recipe because it stinks. It would still show for this because it contains the phrase cupcake recipe. It doesn't care what's behind it, what's in front of it. As long as it contains that phrase in that order, it will still show your ad. And so that's how phrase matches work. They're more precise, but they can still get you some weird results sometimes, depending on your niche. The last type is exact match. This is the most precise and offers you the most amount of control when you're building your campaigns. And it's typically the highest click-through rate and the highest conversion rate because it's so precise. The downside of exact match phrases is that there aren't that many of them. These are also, generally they're correlated to what's called long tail keywords. We'll talk more about that in another section, but exact match means this is exactly what they typed into the search engine box. So if somebody typed that and you know that that's exactly what they typed, then it offers you the most amount of control. You know exactly what they were looking for because they typed it in that exact order. And the reason that it's in brackets is this is how you enter an exact match keyword into your campaigns and your ad groups. You would say car parts in Iowa. And now it will only show if somebody types exactly these words in exactly this order, car parts in Iowa. Now, that offers you lots of control, like I said, but there's the least amount of them available. Some things, some exact phrases or matches only get searched for, 10 times a month in the whole world because that's just the way people work. They only, and then other ones get searched for thousands of times. Either way, it's going to offer you lots of control. And don't worry, you don't have to think of them all ahead of time. We're going to cover in one of the next sections that if you set up your campaigns as they run, Bing is going to start telling you what people are searching for and giving you hints as to other things you might want to, other phrases that you might want to target because they have data on what everybody's doing and they can kind of figure out what you're trying to do and they'll try to help you. So don't think that you have to think up every single phrase that could possibly lead someone to wanting your product or service or whatever. So here's some examples of exact match. And the example we'll keep using is cupcake recipe. Now it's in brackets, so that means we put it in as an exact match keyword. So somebody has to search for exactly cupcake recipe. Now with the phrase matches, if they typed all those other things before or after, they would still show, but not for exact match. If they type anything after this, nope, it won't work. And by the way, no, they don't have to type in brackets, just to cover that again. They would go to the search engine and just type cupcake recipe. So if they type in exactly cupcake recipe in that order with nothing ahead of it, nothing behind it, then your ad will show. It will not show for cupcake show, which would be closer to a broad match. It would also not show for cupcake show, cupcake recipe, which we showed in the phrase matches. A phrase match would still show that. It will also not show for cupcake recipe guide. So that would show for both a broad match and for a phrase match, but it would not show for this exact match. So how do you use all these different kinds of keywords? Basically, you want to find keywords that you want to target, and there's a lot of science to keywords and keyword research and targeting, but it's also very organic. You'll see as we go through the different methods, there are certain research methods that offer you a slightly different insight into keywords and how they relate to customers and behavior, but nobody's going to give you their exact data. The only way you're going to get exact data on what works is to spend the money and run the campaigns yourself. And the campaigns themselves are organic. They kind of grow and change with people's behavior, but they're very scientific. The tools are very scientific as well. The data is very accurate and very easy to figure out what's going on. So you're going to find keywords based on a bunch of different things depending on your niche and what you're trying to do. You're going to do it based on keyword research, which I'm going to cover several different methods for doing keyword research. You're also going to, as you run your campaigns, Bing is going to start suggesting keywords to you. And some of them, they're not so good. Sometimes Bing suggests keywords because ultimately they want you to keep adding more and more keywords, because the more keywords you have, the more often they can show your ads and the more likely it is that they'll get clicks and the more they can charge you. So Bing is definitely incentivized for you to show your keywords, have as many keywords as possible in your campaigns, show that your ads to as many people as possible and get as many clicks, because that makes them the most amount of money. So they're always going to be suggesting how to grow your campaigns, how to spend more money, but it's not always a good idea, because sometimes, especially with those broad match terms, they're not getting you closer to the people that actually want the thing that you're offering. They might be loosely, close to it, but they're not the people that want to take action and do what you need them to do to pay for your campaigns. So you're going to find keywords based on Bing's suggestions over time. We'll cover that later. And you're also going to find keywords based on competitive research. This is kind of an advanced tactic. I'll show you a couple of tools that make it really easy, and it's pretty crazy that you can basically figure out if you're in a niche and you have a competitor that's already running ads. You can figure out what keywords they're bidding on, how much they're spending, which is an estimate, but yeah, it's pretty wild. Definitely, more advanced stuff, but you can figure it out, which is pretty awesome. And Bing actually shows you too. There's competitive metrics. They'll show you like who is bidding on the same terms as you and where you place in the auction, where if you spent more money, you'd be ahead of this person, but then you always have to consider your returns. All right, so finally, you're going to be finding keywords based on your knowledge of your prospects or customers. You might also say just on common sense. If you're a locksmith, there's probably, a number of phrases and keywords that people use to try to find your service. They're the same ones that you would run in a newspaper ad. They're the same ones that someone would call your business looking for or find you on Google. There's so many ways, there's only so many ways to ask for a locksmith. And so you'll probably find them pretty quickly, or you already know them. You can actually just write down keywords. But I like to rely on tools more. It makes it a lot easier. Trying to come up with keywords is not really necessary, but if you know your market really well and know your customers really well, then inside your head is a great amount of keywords. Another competitive thing that we're going to talk about too is looking in Bing and Google search and seeing what other people are putting in their ads. You can't exactly tell what they're doing, but you can kind of figure it out. All right, so up next in week 2, lesson 2, we are going to cover a whole bunch of different ways to do keyword research, and specifically how to find profitable keywords. So we're going to cover some basic and free methods, and also some advanced methods. They're not all paid, but some of them are. There are lots of different ways to find keywords, and they're all very useful. So you're going to become a keyword finding ninja here in the next lesson. So look forward to seeing you there.